Is Kevin Hart an industry plant? That's what Katt Williams says. So I want to tell you something. I'm going to confess something. I don't know the answer. I'm not even particularly interested in the answer, but I'll tell you why I think it's an interesting thing to discuss. I remember that once upon a time, there was a concept called an overnight sensation, meaning somebody who was discovered out of nowhere and rocketed to fame. The reality is that those were myths that were actually created very skillfully by PR departments, where they would pretend that some talent scout happened to be at a cousin's birthday party and he heard the house band who had never played a gig for more than 20 people in their lives. And all of a sudden, on the spot, he signed them. And then the next day, they're selling out stadiums. Okay, that's a myth that never happened. But what's interesting is that in the past, that was considered cool. Like, a PR department would actually be hired to create that narrative that somebody had emerged out of absolutely nowhere and quickly become dominant in their field. And that was supposed to add to the mystique and the allure of that talent. What's interesting is in 2024, it's the exact opposite. If you say that somebody shot to stardom way too quickly, it has very clear negative connotations, such as by calling them an industry plant, which basically means you didn't earn it, you didn't pay your dues, you weren't in the trenches with the rest of us. If you're a comedian, you never went on the club circuit and all of a sudden you're being offered a special. You know, if you're a musician, you never played in the smelly, crowded bars in college towns, right? Or whatever it is. And what's interesting to me is the cultural shift that the very thing that used to be considered an asset, that somebody became famous mysteriously rapidly, is now looked upon with disdain. So why do I care about this? If this is your first time at this channel, my name is Rabbi Shais Taub. The name of this channel is Soul Words. What is this channel about? I mean, I'm a rabbi. I talk about spiritual stuff, mystical stuff. I apply it to our day-to-day lives, a little bit of social commentary, psychological insights. I'm not an entertainment reporter. That's not my point. I'm interested in the idea that in today's day and age, we seem to have shifted away from being impressed by something that happens quickly. And in fact, we're suspicious of it. Something happens too quickly, we feel like maybe there's something manipulative, maybe there's something even nefarious, conspiratorial. And I believe that on a deeper level, on a spiritual level, this actually shows that we are in tune with something very, very right and very, very true. And I suppose I should explain what that is and defend my statement. So God created the world, and at first there was heaven on earth. We call it the Garden of Eden, and it was paradise. And the way that it is explained in our mystical tradition is that not only was it heaven on earth, but it was more heaven than heaven. In other words, the degree of godly revelation that was taking place on the physical plane was more intense and more clear than what was happening on the spiritual planes, in the spiritual realms. If you can sort of imagine this idea that God was more revealed in the physical world than in the spiritual worlds. So that is how the world was created. And yet, what happened very quickly after? There was the sin of the tree of knowledge, where Adam and Eve ate from the tree of knowledge, which they were commanded expressly not to do. This repelled God's presence from the earth. Heaven was no longer on earth. And the world went into a state of metaphysical exile. What does it mean, exile? Normally you think of exile as you kick somebody out of someplace. You tell them, leave here and go somewhere else. Okay, that's physically relocating something. But when we talk about metaphysical exile, what we're talking about is something much more profound than that and much more existential. It really means when an entity is divorced from its true self. So the true nature of creation is to be a testimony to the Creator. That's what it means when we say God's presence was revealed here on earth. But then after God's presence was sent into exile, as it were, then it became the opposite. This world became a place where you don't see Creator, you see creation. In fact, the biggest obstacle for us to perceive of the idea of a source of it all is the fact that we're blinded by just how dominant the physical world is and the way it floods our senses, and it seems to assert itself as the ultimate reality, when in truth we know it's just the tip of the iceberg, or at least philosophically we can appreciate that the physical plane is just the tip of the iceberg. But it just asserts itself so insistently that it can feel, and to a materialist, they will indeed argue that it is the only reality. Okay. If it was all good at the beginning, if God knows everything, and if God is good, and God is all powerful, so why would he let this happen? Why would he make the world perfect and then let it get messed up? For what? So you're going to say, well, it's our job to bring God's presence back to the world. This is the Jewish belief in the Messiah, by the way. The Messianic era is about a perfected world where all of the world peace and the end to famine and the end to disease, all of that are outer manifestations of the inner condition of correcting the metaphysical exile. In other words, you bring God's presence back to this world. Godliness is revealed. Creator is revealed in creation instead of obscured by it. And then all the symptoms of metaphysical exile are ameliorated or altogether resolved. So you're going to say, well, we lost it, but we're bringing it back. All right, that's called a zero-sum game. In other words, you're digging a pit to fill it back in again. What have you gained? Nothing. There's no net gain. There's no advantage to this process. In fact, it seems like a colossal waste of time. And, even it sounds tedious would be euphemistic. I mean, it sounds like torture. You had it all perfect. You lost it. And what's the goal? Bring it back to the way that it was. So here's what I want to explain to you. In our tradition, we explain that there is an incomparable difference between the heaven on earth that existed at the outset of creation when God put heaven on earth and the way that it's going to be imminently when the world is perfected, when our deeds, our good deeds, will be the mechanism which brings God back to earth. And what's the difference? When God puts his presence in a revealed way on this earth, when God makes himself so obvious that you can't deny him. You can't even philosophically wonder, is there a creator, because it's just so obvious, which was the way that it was when the world was first created in the Garden of Eden. That level of unilaterally God asserting himself upon creation is sort of like the industry plant. It's like there's no satisfaction to this. Basically, the higher powers made a decision that they're going to make this thing be, and then they just push it through, and they just open up all the channels and make it work. We don't want that. We don't want that. In 2024, what do people want? We want an origin story. We want somebody who is working. We want somebody who is toiling, who is in the trenches, who paid their dues. In other words, we see the difference between the path to the goal and not just the goal. We don't want just the end result. Oh, we have a perfect world. No, we had a perfect world when the world was created. We want a perfect world that is a result of hard work. And by the way, hard work isn't just exertion. Hard work means that there's actual risk involved, that there were times in human history where it felt like we were on the brink of losing it all. God forbid. There has to actually be skin in the game. There has to actually be something to lose. So we're in this very difficult period between the way the world was created and the way that the world is meant to be. But That's the whole value of it, that we're in the state before the big breakthrough, and that there's something amazing about today, about the culture, I know there's a lot to lament about cultural trends, and I can get negative too if I want to, but there's something marvelous about the fact that today people don't want to just see the end result. They want to see that there was a process and that process involved hard work and risk. And that's really the story of this world, that God wants his perfection on this earthly plane to come about after a period of hard work and risk. And the fact that we human beings were the ones who were enlisted to do that work and to bring that about, and to bring God into this world, to invite him into the world instead of him just imposing himself on the world. That's something that we can find meaning in, and something that can motivate us in our lives when we make our day-to-day behavioral choices. And we just think about it in a very simple way of this next decision. Will it make this world more hospitable to God's presence or not? And I think that's something that we can all get excited about.